Hey guys, we'll be continuing our convert bonus discussion. And do you remember what we did last time?
Okay, so last time, for our own benefit, we left it with clear open questions, which I think we wrote down. So that's a good thing.
Oh, we have the AI, of course. This one. All right, let's paste this into the town hall. Sorry about that, guys. Crazy. Let me restart this. Great. All right, let's see. Questions we had. How to determine optimal number of seasons to return to value target. Where to fix the seasons. Or to higher or decrease the capacity fill. How to structure DT ramping. And then balancing the bonus with the capacity. Remember, we were talking about how if we use the Desmos and we use this number of seasons to get to some percent of the delta P to a value target, this number decreases over time. Versus implementation where we kind of pass the delta P and use that as the baseline as a convert capacity. And we kind of left it off as like either a solution is fine. I personally would like this one better, the one where we use the percent, just because it's better, it's easier, it's more simple to implement, given that if the benefit from both of them is marginal.
This is the word of the max.
Yeah. And I feel like as the system, the delta B is not enough. Like, that's the delta B given the current L2SR, if that makes sense. So if the L2SR changes, the delta B kind of changes in magnitude as a function of L2SR. So that dimension.
The delta B changes or the
delta P, yeah. Like when we have half the liquidity, delta P has like half. But a distance to count the state, if that makes sense, the discrepancy. It's just from a magnitude level.
the time.
The time.
Like as we currently have it, it would be the time to return to the value target.
Well, I'm just making the comment that as the LP token supply decreases, the delta P decreases as well.
The LP token supply decreases.
Independent of people converting, if half the LP token supply were removed, the delta P also decreases.
Yeah.
So that dimensionality is lost. Like,
Why is that lost?
Because we don't know, let's say delta P is half while we hash the delta P. We don't know what percent of the delta P that was loss was due to the LP token supply decreasing or people converting.
You're saying from withdrawals versus conversions? Why does that matter?
I'm not sure if it matters. I just like it's a point. It feels like the delta P in regards to capacity should be in reference to the LP token supply. And doing it on a per season basis kind of does normalize it to LP token supply.
Let me try to maybe summarize where we are at a high level.
Okay.
That's just helpful for me to contextualize for myself what we're actually talking about here, if that's okay. So can you maybe put the chart side by side with the formulas?
Mm-hmm.
So we have this max bonus. It takes the stock per BDV as a bonus from last evening. And then it's some proportion of the max difference between the max seeds for an LP or a well and Pinto. And then subtracts some other factor which we currently have as a G. Or if I recall correctly, G was once we hit the convert capacity, we actually want to introduce some way that the bonus itself comes down, similar to how the time comes down. Now, I believe that in the way that CT is written up here, we resolved last time to make CT equal to 1 and remove it from this equation. Now we have this, which is an improvement from the original convert system, which is that the max bonus you can get for any given PDV that you convert is equivalent to the stock on that convert. That prevents manipulation from system.
Yep.
Now, the open questions are, so CT now below here is removed in practice. Now, the things that we need to determine are, how do we set the capacity and how do we decrease the bonus? Right, we need to change the capacity from season to season, and we need to set it somehow, right?
Yeah.
Those are the open questions.
The min max and the change.
Well, just setting D in general, independent of talking about how we want to change D.
Yeah, setting D and setting D.
Cool. If you scroll down a little bit, is there anything else below here?
There's the ramp up thing.
Anything else?
When does the bonus reset?
Sure. Right. So I'm wondering, do you think it's best for us to update this in real time? Like, what's the best way for us to do this so that we can? I think we get close for that. I'm just curious, what's the best method here? You think?
We can update in real time. This MSD here is kind of a lot.
Yeah, it's confusing, right?
Totally. Well, I think that here because I felt let's just take it out. Just take it out. My latex on GitHub's not the best though. It's latex on GitHub is not the same as latex on
You want to move to like Markdown or something?
I can be what it is. I don't have anything set up for I can read to do that. Then let's just go with the GitHub for now and see how far we get. What is this?
Not maybe up the same.
To like make your own thing.
Yeah, you just hold it down.
my god.
Are you human? 3, oh, come on, let's confirm.
Friction is so high. How does it grade? Okay. I'm gonna do this.
So the difference is scaled by C.
Wait, where is it? Very good. In here. Scale by C. And we should put this up here. And minus some value. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, let me just finish this one.
No, we're good. This is progress.
Great. Resets. Okay. I should be more accurate now.
No. Open questions. Or how we set G. How we set the converter capacity. Those are the two main levels at the moment. It seems.
Yeah.
Hmm. So just taking what we have right now with DT, the way that we currently have it is that the capacity is a function of the previous capacity. I don't understand why is it a min of 0.5 and a max of 0.1?
This is DT minus 1 minus some value, and there's a minimum of 1%.
Got it. But that 1% wouldn't be 0.1%. So the minimum of 10% of what?
The delta P. The Trois Delta P.
Why?
Why is it a function of delta P?
Why a minimum of 10%?
We just put a number out there. This is before we've had this inside.
Got it. So I guess the point is we take the delta P and And then we're saying, so, okay, this is where things get interesting for me. Like, on the one hand, I like the analysis on the left, which is like, how many seasons until we return within this distance of the value target? Like, that's very tangible and understandable. But I'm thinking about it now from the other side, which is something like a cultivation factor. In the field, where we basically start from something very small. And it's just meant to be small. Like, it's not meant, there's no higher thing there, it's just small.
Well, the smaller soil.
The soil, yeah. Like, the cultivation factor makes it such that the amount of soil available is very small. And then it just ramps it up gradually, independent of almost anything else. In its simplest form. Like, obviously it's parameterized in a particular fashion, but I'm just sort of playing the two different ends of the spectrum here. I'm talking about which end of the spectrum do we want to take? Do we want to take the bird's eye view of like setting the capacity as a function of like explicitly saying how long would it take to return to the value target? Or do we just ramp it up very basically? I'm curious, can we just maybe refresh how the cultivation factor works just for my brain? Thanks.
And neck is wrong.
Okay, so what I said is generally correct in the sense of we scale, we take the delta V, and then we scale it down by 24. So we're saying, it would take 24 hours. And then we also scale it by the L2SR, which is to say that at higher levels of liquidity, when the L2SR is higher, the system issues less soil, right?
Yeah, and we're willing to use this converter power than its fuel, the fuel.
Exactly. Thank you. That's very helpful. But at a higher level, the way that the cultivation factor is, the soil issue is set, is it is a pretty basic, like, start the number small and ramp it up. And the ramp up happens via the cultivation factor gauge system. But I guess the point I'm making here is like, this isn't taking the perspective of it should take 24 hours to return to the value target or anything like that. It's just starting it small and ramping it up.
I think it is. You're saying there's like not a guarantee, but there's a emphasis on it taking at least 24 hours.
But that's independent of the cultivation factor, which we start at a very low amount already. So it's like, this was just a scaling down of the issuance to slow it down even further. That's different than the way that the whole system works at a whole. Is it just starts really small and ramps up? The magnitude of how much there is, we've scaled in a way that we feel is appropriate. But there is no element of like, we want to return to the value target via in a certain number of seasons. If that makes sense.
Just from the P itself, just from the cultivation.
or from how the soil is set. I mean, there's nothing here,
How can you say that? It's 24. It's literally something right here.
but there's so much more. That's my point. Like, I guess you're saying that if the cultivation factor were at its max, then it makes 20, and then it's like some scalar of the L2SR, but it's really 24 seasons.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, we would want to say, we would want to pick something similar, which is how, and it's worth saying, like, our current perspective is that the amount of soil ramps up too quickly, right? So
That's on my perspective, but I can see that.
I feel like it ramps up. I think there's an argument to be made that if we ramped up slower, it would be okay.
Totally.
Now, just a final note while we're still here, where price comes in is that we affect the change in the cultivation factor based on the price. So the way it works is, if we're going to increase the cultivation factor, we take the last cultivation factor and we increase it by some standard delta P, but then we scale delta P by the price, the average price over the previous season. So as the price increases, the amount that we increase the cultivation factor also increases. And as we decrease the cultivation factor, the amount that the cultivation factor decreases also scale with the price. I think what this is saying here is that as the price comes up, the amount that we decrease the cultivation factor comes down. As the price goes down, we decrease the cultivation factor more.
Yeah, at a lower price. I think the logic was we did not want to reduce the scarcity quickly at lower temperatures and drop a snowball. That was at low prices and drop a snowball. Dropping a snowball was the main impetus for this price scalar.
What the snowball?
What was dropping the snowball?
Driving it.
Dropping it like the snowball. We scale up and then because if we ramp up too quickly and not enough demand reaches the snowball, then it drops and it will reset. So the worry was that we want the snowball to roll to really gain momentum over a course of seasons, and that's more apparent at lower prices. Like when it's really low, we want any snowball that catches to guarantee to
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so maybe it'd be helpful to just keep this on one side and now look at the other. For the record, I'm getting laughed at here viscerally by
There's so many views. Look at this. We're at 3 now. Here, let me separate this.
Maybe it's just a strong word.
Right.
There's a lot of content here, boys
And girls.
and girls, everybody.
We're inclusive. We're inclusive.
Yeah, on the call today, you were assuming that the 75K seller was a dude. We don't know.
The guy is gender neutral.
Sure. Okay, so in practice, what we're creating is some capacity to sow and receive a bonus. My first thought is that it's like some silo equivalent of the field for soil receiving that you could sow. The difference is that you can convert at any time but we can only convert for a bonus as it currently stands. I could imagine a world where you can't even convert all the time, but we just have a penalty there. But it's like in practice, technically there may be two capacities. So I'm a little bit uncertain on what the word or word should be for this capacity in the silo. But for now, we'll just call it like convert capacity.
Yeah, convert capacity.
If
we have a capacity.
Yeah, we'll need something to replace it. But so the question is, how do we issue convert capacity in a given season? My starting point is that we probably want to model similarly to how we do the cultivation factor in the field.
Yeah, I mean, like the way we modeled the sort of instruments was, I think we were debating on, in the best case, when soil is at its maximum, around how many seasons would we like it to return to its value target in the most aggressive case. So I guess that's the starting point for the convert capacity.
So like I wonder.
But it's so different than like this is issuing data. This is converting, issuing stock. It's so different.
Well, to me, they're like mirror images.
Yeah, they're mirror. But like the downside is very different, right? For the silent versus the field.
But that only has to do with the cost. I mean, you could say it's also the amount. But for me, that amount is different in the sense of like, the system always wants, if it's below the value target, it's generally always happy for it to be sown unless the debt level is super high and the liquidity level is super high. So in general, it's like, and we account for that here. Because we adjust by the L2S. But for me, I feel like with the converter capacity, we would want it in a similar way adjust it by the debt level. Where it's like when the debt level is high, we want to incentivize converts a lot more.
Well, it's different because where converts, there's a finite amount to convert. Whereas in theory, we can tell you get infinite debt.
What do you mean there's an infinite amount? Well, there's like a limited amount of converts.
There's a finite number of non-pental liquidity in the protocol. Whereas in theory, the protocol can call on infinite value from the debt.
There's infinite converter.
It's like
the like as a percent of the liquidity pool, all of it, 100% of the liquidity pool can be converted to Pinto. In the same way that 100% of the Pinto can be sold. So I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I guess like if we digress, or I need a better word for it, but if we regress, if we return to the question of just raw setting the converter capacity, like for me, the starting point is that the converter capacity should be delta P in the same way that I swim this. It's like at the minimum, like maybe it would be helpful for us on this left side to start writing an equation like above where we have the convert capacity factor above that, above here, yeah, right there. And we should just define like the convert capacity below the target is.
Okay, so we have Trois Delta. So that's the base state. Right now.
So now it's like we want to scale. I think there's a couple of factors here. One, we want to get the L2S involved. I'm sorry, the debt level involved something. And open question as to whether we need the L2SR also here. So at let's say that if let's first consider independent of the L2SR the debt. Let's just say that we wanted to implement this log function.
The log function, what? Oh, okay.
So now we pick some amount of seasons that we want to return, 98% of the way to that 100%. What would that look like here? Right, we had those previous equations where it's like log over log.
Yeah. We would just set it to a certain percent. There just need to be a percent of the delta P.
And the seasons, right? The number of seasons.
Yeah. Understanding what manifests and that's just multiplying the Trois Delta P by some scalar.
Oh, something about that in there, so we can start playing.
What should we call that? Yes.
I'll just write it, maybe, so we can see it.
Got it.
And what is G here?
G is the number of seasons to return to its value target.
Just use a different variable.
X here. No, we did inverse of this. Go down to this. This
Sure. Take it down.
first. This information.
Just solve for me. Isn't being input.
G is the percent is the X here. The percent of delta P you need to get here. So now we're given this is the number of seasons. So we want given the number of seasons, what is the percent of delta P we need to the inverse?
I don't understand.
This graph here, takes in, of course, this is not seasons. G is not seasons. I messed that up. X is the number, it's a percentage of delta P that's converted every season, and Y is the number of seasons that would take, right? And you're asking, you want an equation that shows,
Given the number of seasons and some closeness to the value target, how much do we do per season? Got it. So we'll take G and we'll multiply that times delta.
yeah, you want
Delta P. Got it.
this one right here. So your space is nice. Yeah. A little small, but
Just throw that in a parentheses or whatever.
what's up?
Just throw that whole thing in a parentheses.
Why?
This is the delta P multiplication as the commute.
Yeah. So Y is the number of seasons on S. And then the 0.02 is the 98%. So what you really want is like 1 minus the percent.
Right. Can you just write out what those are like S and K? Percent.
Okay. Let's see it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm practicing the code. It would be some static number here. It'd be hard to like prioritize this and have it be codified.
You're saying in Solidity, we're gonna have to pick these ahead and then we might estimate what this is.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah, we can't do it in exponent change and then logarithm work, honestly. But we can make that term a parameter and then you just adjust it, which is effectively the same thing.
We can what?
Like we would just make that term a parameter so that we can change it. But
It has to be done manually.
yeah.
There's no way to make it like
Yeah, if we wanted to, let's say, change S, we would need to calculate this value using S and then upgrade the protocol. But we can't define S and K and S in the protocol and change that.
this is the best argument I've heard yet for why we shouldn't use the log.
Really?
Because I don't see much benefit in using the log personally. And this seems like a major loss. Like the way I was thinking about how we would do it given this is like we're gonna take the debt level and the price and we're gonna add those, within this thing. Where it's like the K and the S maybe a fun like the way we want to change the log is actually dependent on the debt level. If that makes sense. Or when the debt level is higher, we want to be more aggressive. I don't know how we want to do it. But I'm just thinking about how, like if all else is equal, you were saying that they seem pretty simple, but from an implementation perspective, the log is easier. Seems to me like that's actually it's the opposite because we're not going to be able to like push out the parameterization to Kn. We're going to have to make the parameter this term within the equation.
So you want
Maybe write the other one below it, what I'm advocating for.
from my perspective, this will lead to an effect such that S is inaccurate. Like, I think if we have just like a linear division, let's say we want the number is to hit case to 100. In practice, assuming the convert capacity or convert bonus is sufficient enough to convert, I think S will be in practice way lower. And much harder to kind of
That's what we lower, what do you mean?
like I'm saying.
One thing I'm just saying, I think in both of these equations, in order for them to be correct, we need to have that be the max delta P, not the parameter.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, this one is just Trois Delta P.
No, I think it is still max.
The log comes in because it uses Trois Delta P.
Got that, whereas mine would be the max.
Max, something like max Trois Delta P over the course of the season, whatever. But
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean that's my worry. Is that like we target 200 and in practice we reach it in a different in like 150. But it's not even that. It's more like
Why is that a problem?
it's not a problem. Well, the problem is there's an unknown factor of like the accuracy of our season.
Why?
I guess no. I guess that's not correct.
I argue it's more accurate.
Yeah, I think you're correct there. I guess my other argument would be that this capacity is normalized or the same, independent of the distance from its value target. Whereas in the first equation, the capacity increase is a function of the distance from the value target.
Well, I think as the distance from the value target is increasing, they both track it. But then it's just a question of on the way back to the value target, what happens? And to me, it feels like it makes more sense to have this be linear. Like, I haven't understood a reason why we prefer the log, honestly.
Well, it's like let's say we're at 99.5 cents, and the system, in two variants of the system where one has experienced a major depeg and one that hasn't. It's interesting. Your equation would make it such that for the protocol that experiences a major depeg, it's still incentivizing people to return to one very greatly.
That makes sense to me. Like it wants to finish the value target return, whereas if it's just depegged, it doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I kind of like it.
So I personally would advocate for linear.
Yeah, let's keep on going. I would like to do both and then see like how it looks like.
Well, the reason,
But I would say I'm in favor at the moment. I have to choose one.
cool, and for me, the biggest bonus is that then we can leave K and S as parameters. And particularly, it's not even about leaving them as parameters, right now, when you think about changing things based on the debt level and or the liquidity level, to me, it makes way more sense to just like multiply S by that or something like that, if that makes sense. Like we have some standard S that then gets scaled up or down based on the debt level. That's an example. That feels way easier to do based on what you said about solidity. In the linear version.
Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me. Thanks for clarifying.
Right. Just in case it's Viper nerds out there.
Totally. Totally. Shout out the Viper nerds. Anyone that was that deep on Viper and Curve, you know, it doesn't come talk to us, so they're listening to this, you know, at least come say hi. At least come say hi.
Well, like the other thing is that, you know, let's say, I guess my other worry is that we set S too low. It becomes so marginal, so small. Whereas I think in the first case, you know, even a very small S will still have it still has some like large value in the beginning.
Oh, this is never going to be that small.
Okay. Great.
And I would argue that that's actually, it works in the opposite direction. Like the bigger S at the beginning has the opposite effect of the snowball.
You're saying the snowball decreasing over time is not helpful.
Yeah, we want some baseline linear thing, but then we ramp up the cultivation factor. If we have this other thing working in the other direction, it dampens that effect. Like we're going to start bigger and then decrease it, and then have the cultivation factor equivalent increasing against it. It just seems confused.
Yeah, we already have that effect naturally with Trois Delta P. Or I guess we don't with this one. But I was just thinking
We can have a price multiplier. Like we can do a couple different things here.
Yeah, I was just commenting that, you know, in the current cultivation factor, that's already kind of the case where this term here, 12 delta P, you know, decrease as more people, as the snowball increases. But we kind of designed the parameters such that the growth of the cultivation factor exceeds the percent decrease of the delta P.
I think we can achieve something similar here.
Yeah, well, since we have the 12 delta P max hashed, this will never change, right?
Oh, even better. Even better.
That effect.
Oh,
Like I'm curious if we want to update this as well. If we feel like, you know, having the 12 delta P does mitigate the effects, but it's different. It's a little different. This is 12 delta P. Whereas here, I mean, this, you know, this issue is because soil emission is innately capped by the amount of, you know, 12 delta P there is in the system. Whereas here, you know, the system innately already has a maximum. You can always convert 100% of the LP. So I think it's fine.
yeah, I appreciate where your head's at. This was very interesting. I feel like there's potentially even further future refinement we can do here. But at least for now, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. Okay, so let's say now that we're operating on a linear standard. And which is the second equation. And now let's just consider a couple of things. One, we want to then scale this by some, I think not dt, but like just d, right?
Mhm.
So right now we have delta D, which is similar to delta P, but I think we should just make,
So like K here is actually not the most correct term here. Because K works in this log form. Like the whole point of K here is because you can't approach, you're just approaching plot delta P and not.
so we can just have we can just remove the 1 minus K.
Yeah, we just need one. We should divide by S.
Totally.
I'll keep this here on top.
Great. So this makes a lot of sense. So now we wanna, yeah, and so if we look at the soil issuance below the value target, this is saying that we take the delta P T minus 1, we divide it by 24. I mean, I'm interested in changing delta B to delta B max. I am. I'm just pointing it out. It's interesting. We don't need to do it right now. I'm just saying that I am interested. But now what we want to do is we have this other term, which the S is sort of similar to the 24 right now. In the soil issuance. But now I'm trying to figure out one,
So would this DT be 0 to 1, similar to the cultivation gauge system? And that this is the max we want right now already. And we just want to scale to the max.
yes.
Great. All right.
I think it's still 0.01.
Oh yeah. Good shot. Well, this means that we always have capacity. We want the case worked on. But we can fix that later. I can point one is like assuming we do want capacity.
Yeah. Because in the field we always want a little swell, right? Here we don't necessarily.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean 0, right?
But we want a minimum 0 if we don't want capacity. It's like a flag. If we do want capacity, there is some minimum capacity. I guess.
Sure. Well, I guess that's like the price.
Well, I guess at the moment we do want capacity, it'll just step function to 0.01. So
I think it's,
yeah. Right.
but I get that because the T-WAP delta B, so it should be 0.01. Because it's like when the T-WAP hits, then that will automatically trigger. Otherwise, it's only 0. Okay. So I guess we do want to wrap this whole thing in like a max 0. So now let's just think about the debt level, the liquidity level, and the price, and how we want to add these in. I mean, it's interesting. We did not factor in the debt level when we're talking about soil issuance, but we did factor in the liquidity level.
We did. It's in stated here. It's on white paper though. This is delta P here is a function of the pottery.
You pull that out. scalar. Goodness. You know, we're deep when I wrote this, and no idea.
This is wrong.
Why is it wrong?
This this was updated, or not updated, but this was implemented such that we scale from, instead of having discrete ranges of 0.25, 0.51, and 1.2 as that ranges, it ranges from 0.25 to 1.2, as a linear interpolation of the pod rate. So like if the system is below a low pod rate, it's a 0.25. If it's between low and high pod rate, it ranges from 0.25 to 1.2, like in a linear way.
Just as an aside, I'm trying to figure out how. What version of the white paper was this added to?
1.06. Which is 1.2. This was added one version ago.
And we didn't change it. It was just written improperly.
Yeah.
Boy, 1.06, 1.1. And
1.1.
It was 1.1.
1.1 was their cultivation. Wow, whatever happened over it.
Yeah.
Jeez.
All right, we'll have to have that. Do we have like a white paper list of things?
No, a lot.
Can we just make a note somewhere in our game plan? Just make a note that I have to fix the white paper.
You're gonna fix a lot with this next PI. It's next PI now. Yeah, 1.06. Okay, we digress.
Well, you'll just make a note though. Otherwise I forget. I'll make a note as well.
Okay. Wait, it's right here. Oh no, we're sorry. I apologize. Yeah, sorry for the fun. This is the delta P. But what do we should look at there?
The till factor, man. It's the till factor. Do you know about the till factor?
We're stuck have been so blind. Oh shit. Okay. Oh my god. Okay. This is something else. This is okay. Yeah, we did it right. This is the scale that we use when we're above peg.
For the debt repayment.
Yeah. We scale down the number of, how we calculate soil based on number of pods. We scale that. This is that.
Got it. Okay. Which does work discretely.
Yes, we do that. But in the next PI, after this one, it's going to be also a linear interpolation.
Nice.
Okay, we found it.
So this is how we do it. So we don't use debt level. Oh, we don't. Wait, debt level is here, but what about liquidity level?
Liquidity level is. We don't use liquidity level.
What?
Oh, there's a constant. I use a constant, of course. Yeah, I'm looking at maximums of this times. Is it CT? Okay, so when you go to the soil issuance, right here. Ah, of course.
Of course.
Okay, so blind.
I just want it on the record part of our hesitance to do all these calls in public is because of how fucking complicated this is. There is confusion. This is why we move slowly and steadily. But at the same time, we are interested and motivated to do this publicly such that other people can join the conversation and participate. So, on one hand, this is a little bit all over the place, but this is very complex and it is what it is. So this is why we keep a meticulous white paper. This is why we document everything. This is why we really try to be meticulous about everything because it is so fucking complex. So,
Well, now we have,
yeah, total.
it's like, even the GitHub wasn't so, it's
Agreed. That's a great point. Okay. So, can you explain to me what the fuck this says?
yeah. This is a different variable. Yeah, like confusion was this is a math structure of F, and this was P.
So you don't know the difference between math fraction F and math fraction, man. These are, I don't even know if these are math fractions. These are like math scalars.
It's funny, W. Oh, that's because the multiple center.
This is crazy shit. So what does it say? This says that the max soil.
So I don't know what was the probes.
The fertile scalar.
Ah, yes. Okay. The purple scalar is the number of the. No, but this is over. R is so the fusion period. This is the algebra bar. This cultivation factor. This is that.
Guy written in hard with names.
Scalar is not used. It's used in the code, but except for one. It's just it's like a multiplier on delta P if we ever wanted to add it as an option, but in practice it's not used right now.
No, I feel like this equation should say like F over R instead, but
Yeah. Well, the 1/r is the showing that it's like a division of the seasons.
it's clean. This is clean.
Yeah, clear.
We don't know. Okay. So how does the debt level factor in after all? If at all?
But you see where the LCSR comes in, right?
No.
It's a global scalar, I guess is the best way to put it. To the delta P. To for solar issuance, whereas the pod rate
So where we implemented it was
in
at the soil issuance level, not in the cultivation factor component.
yeah. The cultivation factor is the portion, and not even the cultivation, it's like the change in cultivation factor is where we include the pod rate.
And this is where we do the linear interpolation.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's right.
And we're back. Back.
Thank you for that. And just to be clear, what this is saying is that our baseline is 0.02, our max is 0.02, and our min is 0.005. And then we scale from 0.005 to 0.02 depending on the pod rate as it is a function between 0 to 1.
Yes.
Great. Okay. This is great. Let's go back to the other view we had.
And we're back.
We are cooking. Okay. So just for reference, on the right here, where it says delta P equals 2, that's wrong.
Yep.
Delta P is where we include this debt level scaling element.
Correct.
Okay. Great. So let's just restate in the context of the soil how the L2S are the price and the debt level play in it. So when the L2SR is higher, we issue less soil because we're more willing to do converts. When the debt level is lower, we raise the cultivation factor faster.
The inverse. At a higher debt level, we want to decrease, we increase it slower. When we're at already upper, this term evaluates to 1. So delta CT here is 0.005.
Yes, maybe I misspoke. So when the system is healthy, when there's a lower debt level, we raise the cultivation factor more.
Yep.
And then with respect to price, we also scale the change in the cultivation factor by the price.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see how we want to slot in these 3 here. Assuming that we do. If we do. So when the debt level I mean, it's interesting the way we currently have it done in the field because it's like the only thing that affects the raw value is the L2SR. Whereas the price and the debt level affect the change in the cultivation value. Which is just interesting. Here, I would think that we want to do something like a mirror. Where the liquidity level, the debt level, is the thing that determines the scale itself. Where as the debt level increases, we want more converts. As the debt level decreases, we want less converts.
Yeah. Or I guess a better way is like it's more willing to take on more debt than convert, or less willing to take on debt.
So, so I think like we want the number of seasons to hit K, assuming that that's some base level, a la 24, we probably want to scale that by some component of the pod rate.
S. You want to scale S by pod rate?
This whole term in practice.
But yeah, I want to scale this so that pod. So it's hard, like when a system has a low pod rate and low L2SR, or sorry, a high L2SR, sorry, a low L2SR and high pod rate. You know, all else being equal is probably more willing to want more net than less liquidity.
Yeah, so a high debt level should issue less convert capacity. And a low, a high LTSR should issue more. In practice, here it'll issue less soil, but it'll ramp up the soil.
The best way to be like a linear interpolation as well.
We don't do a linear interpolation here on the right. We just scale.
Yeah, because liquidity naturally hits 100%. Where we pod at that level, it can exceed 100%.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
So something very similar to just this in practice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right.
I'm sorry.
All right. I mean, I guess the next question for that would be the min and max based off of this. I guess we can just include this term for now, and then we can figure out the min and max of those as we keep going.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not even to copy that in. I need to go to the LaTeX of the whitepaper.
No idea. I have to get to the LaTeX of the white paper.
I think I can get it. If I have it.
Sorry, this is the LaTeX. Let's see. There's the LaTeX. Pretty close.
Wow.
That's pretty close.
That's sick.
Each of these such good shit eats such good. Hell yeah.
It's still wrong though.
Really?
Go to the white paper just quickly. Yeah, the upper and lower are superscripts and the superscript, not subscript. It's kind of crazy to just have like a bot like this.
Yeah.
Like go do basic bot. And it is like there is some level of intelligence required, but it's pretty low.
Pasting it in.
Totally. No, but I'm saying like the work that you would have had to do would require you to think for like half a second.
Totally.
And you just didn't have to. It's quite impressive.
I'm gonna put this after T, after BT. Yeah, I think of people who like hone their craft, like their whole career path is like doing these kind of things where they're like the journey to the end, if that makes sense. It's like, hey, I'm gonna take all of that.
I mean, I'm wondering, should we put this in another place or something?
Put this where?
Just lower in the page. I'm just wondering if we can simplify the equation.
Super. Okay. F. Sure.
Right.
Okay, I'm just gonna take this log. I think we agreed that this log. So,
Right. We're trying to.
okay.
So
We got the pottery scaling now, but I guess we were one there just to make it don't forget. Like X max. And then you want
it's like f max minus this term times that.
yeah. Or the delta between. Yeah. C dot.
Yeah. F max. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can't be stopped. Okay. Now we wanna great. Now just to finish the replicas, like we already have the max and a 0. We now have some s, but not also 24. Instead of 1 minus 4w, we have this interpolation on the debt level. That feels like a pretty good baseline. Right?
Yeah.
Now we need to define, excuse me, we need to define dt.
Great.
Where dt so this is where we would potentially integrate the price if we were modeling things exactly. But we would now say that.
Do you guys have this here?
What?
This here? No. No.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Worse.
If we took delta D and multiplied it by price, I think we might want to switch the way that we do it. I don't know. Why do we include price?
Price is in the field. We want the system to be more aggressive close to its value target and less aggressive in ramping up. And we want to change the rate of the ramp up because the faster the rate in which it ramps up, the faster the capacity increases. But the higher chance the snowball or the protocol might issue too much debt, and there's not enough demand for it.
So in this case, we may want it to work in a similar way, actually, where when the capacity is met, we want to increase the capacity, of course, but we want to do so. If we were to scale by price, we would say that when the price is further from the value target, we want to start the capacity smaller to ensure the integrity of the snowball in the same way. So I think we would want it to be the same.
Yeah.
And then we'd want it to be the same.
Interesting.
Just thinking, the further we are from the value target, the more impact each non-peso dollar has in delta P. Because here we're calculating the PDB, so PDB when we're below, the further we are from value target, is the more impact it has on the delta price. Making the commentary where when we're very close to the value target and we're going to capacity very quickly, the protocol is saying we want more people to convert at higher prices.
Well, saying at higher prices, it's willing to ramp the capacity more faster. Whereas at lower prices, it's willing to ramp the capacity less.
Yeah, I mean, I should think about the case where so much capacity or so much convert was very utilized, highly utilized, or so close to value target, and how much convert capacity or conversion occur we're very far away from now. I guess my worry is in creating a system where so many converts were utilized very early onto the debt cycle. Just going back to the shape of the curve, right?
I lost it. Can you repeat that?
I guess the point of my worry was,
Where's your worry with respect to? What are we talking about?
the capacity.
But what about what's part of the capacity or just in general?
I guess the magnitude of capacity
The magnitude of the change of the capacity or the magnitude of the capacity in general?
in general.
Okay.
On the basis affects it. My worry is that the system is very close to the value target, and as such, the capacity ramps up very quickly.
Up to the converter, up to the max converter that we could have.
Yeah,
All the way to peg, assuming that if we sell out the capacity every season, that's fine.
well, I don't want to make a scenario where we just utilize the system drains of liquidity very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess just to think about more, we're using this one delta P, which itself will be very small in scale for the distance away. So
Well, you're making the point that at certain debt levels, at certain liquidity levels, we don't want to do this as much.
totally.
So I hear you saying that when we factor in the liquidity level, we want to make it such that the liquidity level is heavily factoring in how much we do here. So to me, it does make sense to put it in the delta D, a la how we do,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like your commentary of, we impact, all of this is a rate of change. The power rate itself is a rate that only impacts the change in which we change the soil, which itself changes the power rate. Whereas, liquidity level is directly correlated with the soil issuance, and we're trying to mirror that here. I guess the purpose was to avoid a large feedback loop, right? Where the thing itself affects itself and causes adverse effects.
the idea behind which part.
Having the power rate be having the power rate control the rate of change rather than the change itself, the amount itself. Right.
Yeah, because we issue amount based on the delta P, the delta B. I mean, it's not the most clear why we do it the way we do it.
Well, I see it as the pod rate. I mean, the solar issuance affects the pod rate, so it should, for it to take it into itself, and so directly, it's correlated directly, it can. It's much more susceptible to feedback loops, right? Whereas having a function of change, allows us to kind of have it manifest over time.
Well, for me, I'm thinking about it more like a margin. Like, why do we put the L2SR at that absolute level, whereas we put the price?
What's an impact, right? Like the L2SR is a bigger impact than the pod rate in the price, but that's only in a season by season basis. But over time, that's where the pod rate and price really come into play. It just affects the range, This is how we move in the range itself. The pod rate here is affecting our maximum capacity, but then the liquidity level is to change how fast until we get to the maximum range.
I'm trying to think if that's true. The debt level determines the max of the range, because depending on the debt, we can know.
Yeah, but the most we want to convert is a function of the debt itself, really. It's not enough to just say you have a high L2SR. There's a preference to convert. But it feels like that level,
It is enough, you're saying, in that case? You're saying in the soil case that it is enough to say, given the L2SR, we know how much we want to convert, or we want so max.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I feel like for the field, the programmer can always call on this guy is working this, and always take on more debt if the people deem as worthy, right? It's just more of when it wants to.
And if we take a 10-15 minute break, just to sit on this, this is interesting. I want to use the bathroom and stuff too.
Yeah, I'll pause this.
Is there a way to pause it, or how does that work?
Like the default juice, work on a cultivation practice simulations. Loaded. Stop recording.
Sure, we'll start at number 6. All right, we're back.
Is it to see the wall?
Yes, God willing. God willing. So I think for me, the confusion. First, I feel like the structure that we now have for the convert capacity makes sense. We still don't have a way to change the bonus. Like we still don't have a good way to set G necessarily.
DNG?
No, just G.
We haven't done delta P.
Totally. I'm just suggesting like I feel like the work that we're doing so far on the convert capacity has us effectively in line with the cultivation factor stuff in the field. We still don't have a temp change equivalent, like changing the bonus itself. But that's a totally separate problem in practice. At least given the current model. So I feel like it'll be most helpful to review the way that we've chosen to apply the debt level, the liquidity level, and the price in the context of the cultivation factor in the soil, just to review that and ensure that it makes sense the way we're doing it, and do it in the context sort of in parallel of the convert bonus capacity. How does that sound for you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the reason for me that this gets complex, or maybe I can't say that, the way that we currently do it, at first glance strikes me as the best way to do it. Is that we don't really like explicitly consider the debt level and the liquidity level as like a pair. Like for me, the interesting thing here is, let's say that we're below peg, right? We now have this cultivation gain. We have a snowball in the field. We're now also introducing some snowball in the silo. And they're both going to work at the same time. Meaning, at least as we currently have it, and I think this is a better way to have it. It's not like we have, first we do the soil snowball and then we do the silo snowball. We're doing both at the same time. And I'm trying to understand how we want to sort of express, given that we have these two snowballs, how the system might want to treat each of these snowballs. Each of these snowballs. Not independent, but in parallel. Like, given, this takes me all the way back to the beanstalk state space discussion, where it's like, we have certain times where we have, the system's really healthy, and it's a low debt and a high liquidity level, in which case it's probably neutral, right? And then there's other cases where there's a really low debt level, a really high debt level, and a really low liquidity level, where the system would prefer to preserve liquidity, but only slightly. And then there's a lot of middle ground, where it has a somewhat reasonable liquidity level and a somewhat reasonable debt level. And obviously, if it has a high debt level and a high liquidity level, it would much prefer converts, and vice versa. But in the current way that we set all this up, it's unclear to me how the system would even represent that properly. Like, because of the way that we currently apply the liquidity level at the absolute level, but the debt level at just the delta P level, the rate of change of delta P, in fact. Or maybe it's like the magnitude of delta P. We don't really have a way to say like the debt level is really high and the liquidity level is really high. Therefore, we want to act differently than if the liquidity level were really high and the debt level were really low. I don't know how clear I'm being.
Yeah, I mean, these don't take into cases.
Yeah, it's just taking the raw stuff.
But it's not even that, it's like the raw stuff. We take each point in isolation. Like we don't combine them. We don't take everything in the whole level. I mean, I think the rationale was that it would be very complex to do it in that level, and just restricting it to one dimension was suitable enough. At least for like the global delta P level.
But I'm thinking about now looking at these two snowballs, whether that makes sense. Like, I'm thinking about
yeah, the retrieve these are very independent things, like in the just like before now, but not together.
it feels like on the one hand, like we didn't include debt level, liquidity level, and price, where individually it does make sense. And it's logical why we include each of them the way we include them. But I can't say that it feels like it's the best way to do it. So I'm hesitant to go ahead and like for me, we could go ahead and we could just implement the convert bonus capacity as a mirror to the current way that the field works. But I'm quite confident that that wouldn't be the optimal way to do it at this point.
Totally. But would an optimal method require us to get more data on what the curve would even look like?
Well, it's good, better, best. Like,
yeah, I'm suggesting that I think it's unclear why we do it this way, but it seems like this gets us on the edge of the S curve.
yeah, this gets us. My concern, I guess, would just be that. Yeah, I guess you're making the point that it doesn't matter at the margin. Like, it's pretty marginal as long as we have a snowball.
We're in the direction of like.
We're definitely directionally correct.
Yeah. Like from my understanding, we would need more data on cycles before we even like prioritize. I would say, I guess this function, this term here, to include net level price.
Yeah, I just don't know if that's true. Like,
I think so.
I'm just thinking about.
Like for me, it's so hard to know how well the field is doing with the cultivation gauge until I see it like do its thing in multiple cycles.
Maybe the way to do it is like we design each of them like this, but then we would want to put some like overlaying system that scales one up and one down depending on the state.
Like we scale.
We take this whole thing, this whole factor, and then scale it slightly, based on the relationship between the debt level and the liquidity.
That would be awesome.
That's one way to do it. I mean, there's no right answer for that.
Right now there's no preference in the system to choose when it wants to engage the solar issuance snowball faster than the reverse snowball. It would just do this thing.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing that I'm getting at. Like so I'm still not so convinced that the way we have the field set up is the best way to do it, honestly. At the same time, yeah, I guess for me it's like I'm open to either course of action. Either we can spend time really thinking about it again from first principles now, including the field, or we can just do it. We could make it a silo mechanism.
Hello everyone. Ben and Freeho unknowingly had their audio disconnected for about 8 minutes at this point, during which they evaluated the field snowball and silo snowball and how ideally the two would interplay with one another, where the behavior of the snowball in the field would affect how the snowball in the silo ramps up, and vice versa. In practice, though, given the complexity of such a dynamic, they agreed to implement them independently for the time being. If you would like to hear more about their thoughts on the matter, please feel free to ask them in a future dev call, town hall, or in Discord. We apologize for the inconvenience. Thank you very much.
Testing.
Okay.
So we don't know what happened. The microphone glitched out. We remain unable to figure that out somehow.
All right, we're here. It's P minus one. This is D. Okay. I think that's it. Fine system set. P minus.
So we have to add a middle case.
Yeah. Yeah, this is where we need to add that threshold. All right. Phone's capacity reach, else if rubber capacity almost reach, whatever that
You have to switch it.
When did I? Okay.
Great. And now can we do a similar thing for delta D?
Delta D.
How we want to add the L2SR? I don't know if we need to do it that way because the L2SR is just between 0 and 1. Right.
Yeah. I don't we want to scale it? Well, let's just set it for now. See what it looks
I
like.
think it could just be times 1 minus the LTSR.
One minus step.
Times some constant.
Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Great.
And this ramps things up to the convert capacity in how many seconds? 180.
In 30 minutes. I mean, I think this would require some analysis that you. And then yeah, it would be good to know what range we want this to be. What S.
Like 200 makes sense.
200.
I'm making it up.
I feel like it'd be a lot slower. I feel like it should be a lot slower. What is it? No, sorry, 200 is the maximum, right?
Yeah. This is something we should have default juice run some tests on.
Or what do you want to see? Like the range?
Examples, given historical state, what would the bonus be? How would it ramp up?
Given S, F max, F min, U.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard. It seems like the bonus is ineffective,
This assumes what?
Like the bonus doesn't do anything. Like the bonus doesn't affect the change itself, like the protocol.
Repeat that. The bonus doesn't change what?
The bonus doesn't change how people behave. And then we're just saying at this liquidity level, at this L2SR, at these parameters, this is the bonus.
Well, it's more like how aggressive do we? We're just talking about capacity right now. We're not even talking about the bonus itself.
Okay.
We're just talking about how does the capacity change, which is the supply.
Yeah.
And I think we want to parameterize F max and F min as, where did we get the 0.02 and 0.05 from? Yeah, so this
It was like in the fastest scenario, it would take 50 seasons to get to maximum. In the worst case, it would be 200 seasons. So that was like the baseline. That was the idea. But then that scales, that's independent of scaling this by price.
Well, what this is basically, we should think about it as like a sum, right? So it's like once we hit the max F,
Should F be to S here?
I'm sorry?
What just happened? Like, shouldn't F be a multiplier to S? Shouldn't F be on the denominator?
Well, F, let's say that we did it. This is just scaling S depending on the debt level a little bit, right?
Well, scaling S, yeah. Or I mean, the whole term.
The point is that if the debt level,
The debt level is high, we want S to be lower, and vice versa.
if the debt level is high, F evaluates to 0. Right?
If debt is high, then F is minimum. It's inversely proportional right now. But like, what do we want this to do? Again, we want at low debt levels, we want the protocol to take on more debt than the convert. So it should take it longer. It should have lower capacity.
So it should be the denominator.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, all we need to do is S. We just need to check S and U, I think. When we're giving default juice what to analyze.
Because F is going to be fixed.
Well, not fixed, but changing S and changing F would effectively just change the, like, if we're just giving out, we're just asking for a graph between what the delta P is between.
Sure. I guess for now we can just have S and U, and then we can impose on top of that then.
Totally.
Right.
Like F is the range. S is just like the base.
Totally. And then U is really the thing that changes how fast it ramps up.
Yeah.
S is like baseline, U is how quickly it's going to ramp. Great. Okay, I'm comfortable bookmarking this part.
Cool.
So, damn, people are really excited posting these Delta Bs.
Yeah.
Louise.
I wonder why. All right, what's next? G. Well, do you think we can bookmark this and go into G?
Yes.
Right.
There's the open question also is the reset of the thing, but I guess that's related to G as well.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, this one's hard.
Well, I don't know how hard it is. It's like I don't know why as a basic version we couldn't just have it subtract one season's worth of bonus.
Totally. But like deduct this basically, you're saying.
Yeah, so it's like if G is 1, you know what I mean? Like we just have G be like 1 or -1, if that makes sense.
Yeah. We want this G to be G. Somewhere in the white paper we do something like this, where we have like a variable that denotes the binary positive and negative.
Totally. I'm wondering here if we want to do -1, 0, and 1 though, where it's like we have that steady, some sort of steady range, which could be potentially different than the sold out, almost sold out. Like they are in the field, they're different, right? In the field, we have increasing, steady, decreasing. Here, I feel like we should probably copy the same thing, where we check the demand for the convert bonus past the last, and then we see if it's increasing or steady or decreasing. There's an argument to be made, though, that we're better off just doing the absolute, like did it sell out or did it almost sell out? If not, there's not enough demand. But I'm interested in the relative demand as well. And the reason to do the relative demand is that the system really does look back like at the previous season and say like, okay, I made some changes. How did this affect the demand? And I also feel like there's merit in that from the perspective of like, let's say that the convert bonus factor, capacity factor increases, such that now there's not enough demand to convert all of it, but there is still demand to convert the same amount. Like, are we really now gonna lower treat it as like the bonus wasn't enough? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, we definitely need the increasing. I mean, we want to match the field.
I think that's right.
Where's that as well? That's good. Like in here, in our graphic, we do need something different, increasing and decreasing demand, independent of almost selling out, selling up.
Yes, exactly.
This doesn't work.
Exactly. Cool. I think we're done.
Yeah, I mean, just instead of this, we're going to be just starting with PDB.
It's all going to be the same, just the equivalent.
Yeah. What a jump. What's so funny?
So complicated.
So simple. Get your seat.
Yeah. We're like a year or two away from the AI being able to help us with this stuff.
Yeah. Please.
At that point, though, we're just going to be like retarded. We're going to be so much fucking slower than that thing.
What is increasing demand? Like, if more was converted in last season, and less was converted, and we're going to have a margin.
It's just some, like we literally take the raw amount of convert capacity that was hit for the bonus. We have to track that.
Yeah, similar to
demand for soil. Like we measure how much soil was sown.
right.
Wow. I feel like I just went through a hurricane.
Yeah. Big jump. What's our remaining thing? We just need, at this point, we just need analysis to figure out what we need with this.
You're still in the call, right? Granola's still getting the notes.
Yeah.
Right.
Once he's finished the cultivation factor simulations, now we'll have the convert simulations.
Yeah, I'll just respond to him like, yes. Yes, yes.
Yes. We'll need your help eventually.
We are letting you know. Consider this your official notice.
Okay, we need to determine U, F max, F min, and S. S is the seasons to value target, or target seasons to value target. F min, X ranges target. Wait, what you really want here? We don't want F min, F max. We want S min, X max. Like this should be S, and then this should be like S min, X max here.
Sure, right. Yeah. Beautiful. That's good, man. I like that a lot.
Cool. So S view, S max. So what's the best way to figure these numbers out? Is it that we find a range of S min maxes, determine delta P, or should we determine what's the reasonable capacity here? And
Just post the latest screenshot. Because it still has the F.
great. So what will be the best way to get these numbers, you think?
I think we wanted to look at, given different delta P's, L2SR's, depth level, what S looks like, if you know what I mean. Like just affecting, given the delta P, and I mean, first, maybe the way I would think about it is independent of S, depending on how we set U, that will determine how this value ramps up, right?
Sure.
So it's like there's the base level of the value, and then it's how quickly does it ramp up. I'm interested in analysis on both of them somewhat independently, if that makes sense. But they're obviously related. So it's like, how much do we start at relative to the delta P? And then how quickly do we ramp up? So I'm interested in just seeing examples, like, given if we set it at 200, if we set it at 500, if we set it at 1,000, if we set it at 100, what do we get in practice as the capacity? And then how quickly does it ramp up depending on how we set U? I know it's imperfect.
No, this is wrong. This is P. Imperfect.
What's wrong?
This is wrong.
Why?
This should be P. This should be pricing.
Yeah.
You want examples outside of the protocol, or like would you? I mean, I think the best way would just to be to simulate every season with this, and then we have the base case, and then we just change S.
Sure, and then we sort of see how it will ramp up from there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the best way to do it is used. Oh, it is pretty easy actually. You would just get the largest Trois Delta P we have recorded.
Which is like 500K or something.
Something like that.
No, I feel like it doesn't have to be the most complex analysis. It's just good to see what it would be in practice.
Right.
Boom.
Oh,
Boom. What a slog. Ugh. What a slog. I feel good. It's crazy. We're so deep in it. I looked at the clock 1 minute ago and 21 minutes have gone by. That is fun stuff. All right. I think that's the meeting. Thank you for those that listened. For the record, I said retarded to mean slow. Otherwise,
it'll be on the record.
yeah, it is on the record. All right, folks. Talk soon.
See you guys.
Peace.